I'd like to introduce to you Professor Meiklejohn. He's also a geomorphologist from the Geography Department at Rhodes University, but he's been in the field for 25 years working in Antarctica and on Marion Island, so he has many experience with successful grant applications. So we've asked him specifically to help us reach the same success level as him. So Ian, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to hear from you.
I'm sharing my screen. I prepared a little presentation. Just listening to some of the speakers before me, I hope that I am not repeating too much of what they've said. So sincere apologies if I do. But I think I hope that it reinforces particularly what Tracy has just said, because I've used the South African National Antarctic Program as a template for setting up my presentation, and so these are just some of my thoughts. And we all have to start somewhere, and I was very lucky enough to be part, when I did have some hair, be part of the 1992-93 Mars Glacier expedition to with Bass, and even worked with dogs. So that the last dog team in Antarctica. So been incredibly lucky and privileged to have worked down there. Okay, so where do you start? And where do you start setting up your research proposal? And obviously it starts with the call, but your own research depends so much on what the context is. What is the context of your research? Where are you working? How does it fit in with SCAR imperatives? How does it fit in with global imperatives, the national imperatives in South Africa that Tracy was mentioning? So they're all important. And in that, be strategic. You know, Antarctica is, to some extent, is quite easy because it is incredibly important globally. It's the global early warning system, and that. So in doing that, do your homework. You will have so many times during my short presentation, in almost every slide, I have a comment which says, do your homework. Go back, see what's there. And within that, also, obviously, as I'm a geomorphologist, I can't go and do any work in microbiology because I'd be totally clueless. So I'm using the ridiculous to make a point. And a lot of you are part of well-established research teams. I was unlucky enough not to be part of one when I started with the South African program, so had to start from scratch. That is quite daunting, let me assure you. But your context will influence how you approach that proposal. So use your mentors, use the PI, and to try and glean all the good things from them and try and check out all the bad things. And, you know, as an academic, if I can't leave a project to the next sort of generation and they don't improve on it, then I haven't done my job. So you need to be in a position to improve on what's gone before you, but don't replicate anybody's work. You know, it's pointless. You're not going to get it granted. I think most today in with electronic communications, it's so easy to see what others have done. And also, don't go it alone. It's incredibly difficult working in small groups. You need to be part of a sort of a broader project. So you need to take those approaches and ask for help. You heard Tracy, in the South Africans heard Tracy say, contact her. She's there to help you. She's incredibly helpful. So you've got the resources there. What do the funders require? That's up to you to determine. Go and read the accompanying documentation. All the grants that I've ever been involved in have incredibly detailed documents saying what you can do, what you can't do, who is covered. Again, at bottom, the words on the bottom, do your homework. And so see what they are looking for. And sort of, are your research interests appropriate for them? If it's a marine call as a terrestrial scientist, it's pretty stupid if I apply for it. But there, what outputs are required? So in other words, you've got to start strategizing and seeing what they want from you. And you had, again, if I can refer back to Tracy's talk beforehand, they have very specific needs and aims to look at. What system does the funding agency use for evaluating proposals? We know that they have panels in South Africa. What do systems elsewhere use? What is the point system? You get certain points for each component of the application. That's all in the documentation linked to it. And who's evaluating the proposals? Are they peers, or is it people from abroad that are not sure of the context? This all should formulate how you approach the proposal. And sorry, it's not, I'm not at work, so I'm sitting at, I apologize. It's not my phone, it's my wife's phone. But anyway, sorry. Set up a team. You can't go it alone. It's really, really difficult to be in teams. So many of you have started doing research in the Antarctic, if you have, and have started as a team member, where the PI has been your supervisor or a mentor, and so you should be aware of what you need to construct in a team. And the team should have a range of expertise. You don't want everybody doing exactly the same thing. You need a range of expertise, and today there's a huge emphasis on multidisciplinary science. So that reinforces this. Also, a team that has a range of experience, have really experienced people who know what's going on, and then others who are new, who can fit into the place. Can the members cope? Working in Antarctica itself is not always very easy. So you need to make sure that the people who you take down can cope with both the social as well as the physical sort of requirements of working down there. Your team should have leaders and followers, and it's up to the PI to identify who does what, so that you have some people who can actually take the lead when you're in the field, and if something happens to the team leader, then who's going to take their place. So you need that. You also need suitable support personnel at either your institutions, or in the case of working in the field, it will be the logistical support provided by the Antarctic Agency. And it's important that all these people have a role in making decisions, but specifically, I would say, at the co-investigator level. Even if you're not, the person's not a co-investigator, they need to be able to communicate and work with making decisions in a team. And it's part of their education for later on, when they start taking over and running projects. And as I said earlier, there's an increasing emphasis on multidisciplinary science. And for the proposal requirements, I've used the South African National Antarctic Program's basic layout and the sort of things that are required. Tracy has mentioned a lot already, so there will be some duplication. But check the documentation that accompanies the call. And again, it's another sort of term that I will use quite frequently in the next few slides, is there must be a narrative. You're telling a story to the panelists who are going to decide whether you're going to get funding or not. So you've got a story to tell. The title must link into the context, must link into where the study is going to be, and how that fits in with the principal investigator and co-investigators, and what their range of experience is. And then to take the sort of narrative further, all of these calls have an executive summary, a project summary, or an abstract. The detail comes later. So if you've got an evaluator who's looking at the project, the first thing that they will look for is the executive summary, and that's critical. So you need to have your ducks in a row there, and it needs to be high, have a high impact. Check for consistency with the detail. Again, that it must link to what you say later on in your proposal, so that you don't say something in your executive summary and introduce something else in your main proposal. I've seen a few like that, and it's most frustrating because you then go back and have to try and find out where it comes from. The timelines are normally defined by the call, so you have no role there normally. The detailed requirements, that a few things, a scientific context and background. So what has been done previously, what has been done in other contexts. So non-polar, and they talk about the third pole being the mountains. What's been done in mountainous areas, and what's been done outside of those areas? Does it have any relevance to your study? And all links again to an academic problem. What am I going to do? What questions am I going to answer? So it needs to be as clear as possible. Your problem statement needs to be as clear and as brief as possible, and understood by non-experts. Because remember, you will have non-experts on the panel, and they need to understand what you're trying to get to. And again, these also need to align to global or national priorities, and in Antarctica to SCAR priorities as well. Your aims and objectives. This is like a research project that you would do for any PhD or any degree. It has the same thing. It has the same narrative, the same need for a narrative rather. Follow on from your problem statement and your aims and objectives. So your aims and objectives tell the panel how you're going to solve the problem. Again, aligned to the global, national, SCAR, whatever priorities. And what's the impact of your study going to be? What is it going to do in the bigger scheme of things in the world, nationally in your country, and in the big world out there? And obviously, you need a review of the literature. Again, do your homework, follow the narrative, and remember that your proposal is a scientific document. I was horrified in being on a panel where we looked at, we had 8 proposals, and one had in an arbitrary table reference to any literature. And these were science plans by very, very senior academics. That would not get through now. So I think that you need to remember that that you have to do your homework, and it's scientific. So as you would write a thesis, in some ways, that's how you write your grant proposal. You need a methodology and work plan. Again, the method is how I'm going to solve the problem. You've identified the problem, you've got your aims and objectives. How am I going to do it, and what is the work plan? What's available? What's provided? By the logistical support. You need to know these things, so you've got to do your homework beforehand. Also link them to the financials. How much money is available? What equipment am I able to purchase? What equipment can I take from my home institution? And again, follow the narrative. Don't suddenly introduce something new. And again, this has been some of my frustrations in reviewing projects. Outputs are the critical. Publications are normally the key. In the South African program, at one stage, training students it still has high priority, but it had even a higher priority in the past. And so you need to link that to what the funding agency requires. Don't promise what you can't deliver. In other words, don't say you're going to produce 12 publications a year, when actually you can probably, the sort of type of data you're collecting is long-term data, and you can only produce 1 or 2 in 2 or 3 years. So people have to be aware of that. Rather sort of be conservative in this regard, I would think. And again, linked to your narrative. And part of the outputs, I've put it under outputs, but it's sometimes in a separate section, is the science outreach. How reaching out to the general public is important. Social media, school talks, trying to involve communities in your research. That's all part of the output. And then in South Africa, personnel development is critical. Taking young people through into broader science communities, and so that's a key part of any proposal. That's what I would put in as a key part. And in South Africa, transformation is an imperative as well. We've got to remember that we have to cater for the entire population and not just a small portion. And how do you go about this? And so many times I see glib statements that are made and that actually are not very constructive at all. Again, for the financials, do your homework. What can be funded? What are your limits? Don't go overboard. I prefer to be conservative here and follow the narrative. Then often a proposal will have several supplementary requirements, that publication lists, suggestions for reviewers. Again, be strategic. Know what the people think of your work, and also, choose people who are good internationally and well respected. Don't just choose pushovers, because that comes through very clearly when you're on these panels and you have people who write poor reports just saying everything you're doing is good. You need somebody who's critical there as well. I'm a geographer, so maps are important. If they often only as an addendum, so it helps the panel to spatially contextualize things. And then generally, what do you need from the logistics? Because the people who provide the logistical support need to know what you're going to be doing and whether they can support you or not. Again, do your homework. In my case, in my project, we started from scratch and we had to do all the search and rescue training ourselves, safety stuff in the field. So it was a huge effort and took up so much, an inordinate amount of science, and actually inordinate amount of time, and it actually detracted from the science. So my key words for this is do your homework, and basically that, I think I'm already sort of at where I was supposed to stop at 20 past. So I sort of had to rush a bit, but I'll try and finish there so that you all get back on time. But hopefully that's given everybody some ideas of what to do.
Thank you so much, Ian. I think that was very informative, and you've answered the list of questions I have. You've already answered through a lot of what you've said, and I think it's just very important what you also mentioned, to really stand out from the competition is to be thorough, to make sure you speak to what the call is about, and to pay attention to detail, to make sure you speak to policy, you have maps, your language and your scientific writing is on par. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, we appreciate it. If there are any other questions, you guys can fill it in the Google Docs and we will relay the information. Thank you very much, Ian.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Liesl.